what point would you consider this a bull market? You can't go to Robinhood. You can't go to Webull. You can't go to any of these other brokerages. Coinbase is it.
The number one product in landfills is wind turbine blades.
There's only so much stupid you can get away with.
How can you not make a good Star Wars movie? Like, I mean, how? Dude, have you ever looked at water futures?
Not until you sent me that text today. I was like, water futures? You can trade water? And I was like, I gotta find out how to do this. We talk about energy, but like the most traded energy commodity out there, oil, probably second, natural gas. Where do you see oil here?
It's like free money. It's just incredible how inverted this curve is right now. I mean,
there's some PhDs that suck. Not all research is created equally, and then you get people.
I would just ask for both of you, what's your biggest positions?
Welcome to the 4th episode of the Growth and Gains podcast. As you can likely see or hear, I've done some rebranding with the podcast with the addition of Monty as a co-host and contributor to the podcast. I'm super pumped about the value that he's going to bring to this podcast, especially with his professional background as an analyst. And I'm also excited to announce that soon these podcasts will be available on my website, on Apple Podcasts, and Spotify as well for the audio formats only. And over the next few weeks, you can be on the lookout for a new merch store to be available on the website as well. And as for today's episode, I'm going to call it the last warm-up episode, where I'm having one of my trader friends come on the podcast. We're just having a conversation as friends about what's going on in the market or what's going on socially, what our positions are, what we're looking for, what do futures look like, what does energy look like. We cover a wide range of topics. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And I know you already know this already, but I just want to remind you that this is not financial advice. We are not active financial advisors. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. And with that, I'll leave you to the podcast.
How was your trading today, new trader? And Monty, I know you just
down 2%.
You're down 2%. Wait, what? This day was fire. How are you down 2%?
Well, because volatility expanded. So I had some positions on that did very well. My short positions did well, but the positions that I had strangles on, the downside move and the put skew and the expansion of volatility in those stocks outweighed my other positions. So it wasn't a bad day considering the move. Yeah, I was short the NASDAQ, but I was long the Russell, and the Russell was down as well today. So it's probably one of my biggest positions, that in Coinbase and Nvidia. Coinbase and Nvidia did great. But the NASDAQ Russell pair did not really work that well today. I mean, it was good, but it would have been better if the Russell was a little bit stronger. But it did work, but not as well as I had hoped.
Yeah, I cut my Coinbase earlier in the week, and I saw it was kind of moving today, but I was chasing Tesla all day like a maniac. We had a 10% down move. I just kept buying more and more puts on it as it was coming down, and I was already short into the earnings, which woke up this morning and I was like, man, only up like 20%. And then I saw how the market was looking, and right now I'm using that supercomputer stock SMCI. I kept messing up the ticker all day long. SMCI, I was using that, and I was like, this is the hype stock right now. This is the Nvidia right now. And I saw there's no buyers there, and I just went AWOL on everything. I was like, if people aren't buying this right now, they're not going to buy anything. So
is that the one that doesn't have options? It doesn't have an option chain, correct? It's just stock.
SMCI does, yeah.
That's not the one that I was thinking of.
Yeah, they had some killer news. The market's been loving them, buying them up like crazy. So when I saw the buyers had quit there with no real bad news, and then you saw people trying to come in and buy Nvidia with TSM, like not see this bad news. My thought right now, not to derail the conversation, or to take over the conversation, but is if this TSM says they don't have the demand that Nvidia says exists. TSM like, we're not having it, and so one of them has to be lying or exaggerating, and I'm going to assume it's not the company that's destroying their stock right now. So I think Nvidia is full of it. I think they're being exaggerated, trying to justify their skyrocketed stock price, and so I also pushed a lot of shorts there as well. I even got some really far dated out in September. It's super expensive, but maybe I'm coming in too early. We see a bounce into the earnings, but I slower
What
buying
strikes
further out.
what strikes are you buying in September? Because I have short puts and short calls in September.
Oh, 350. I bought the 350 puts.
I'm short the 370s
Oh, you are? Yeah, good luck.
against the 580s. So I have the 370 580 strangles on right now in September.
Okay,
I
okay.
actually rolled down today my calls, which I'll continue to do if we
Yeah.
keep getting down moves.
And I might be way too aggressive on these 350s, but I went out to September because I'm thinking before then we'll maybe test like 420, and that's enough of a move that'll make a nice profit there. It's kind of like a lotto, pretty much at this point. And I'm hoping that I'll just hold a portion of that into earnings and then actually play it as a lotto. Because right now it's just to have some sort of exposure to the downside, but not putting myself at a ton of risk if we get an upside move because I don't have a lot of delta there. And just to keep some sort of exposure. So that's kind of like my thought process with that one. And I sold all my short dated puts into the close. Probably shouldn't have. I kept a small portion of Tesla for August open. I set up an AI short because I think that's just trash company. I almost want to short Carvana. You set up an option play today, right, Monty? Or was that recently?
I did. Yeah, I think I put it in yesterday. I bought
the value
couple
investor
puts
getting into
for-
options.
I know. Contrary to my overall long-term thesis, I bought a couple puts for Trimble. And we actually talked a little bit about them on last week's podcast, but
Yeah.
so far, let me see, it's up just under 20%, so it's doing good so far. But
Nice.
yeah, the rest of my
What's the
portfolio
ticker
is very
for that?
TRMB. TRMB, and I can share you send you the Substack after the podcast deal to take a look at it for the research to back it up.
And for the
but no, the rest
viewers,
of my portfolio.
yeah, for the viewers, we have all the Substacks and everything, and even the podcast we automatically uploaded the Discord so you can keep track of everything. No.
Yeah, definitely check out the Peach Pit for more info on that. But
Yeah.
no, the rest of my portfolio was a mixed bag. You know, in conjunction with what y'all mentioned, tech was pretty down, 1.5% to 2%. Energy looked pretty good, 1.5% to 2% up. So yeah, it was a very mixed bag today. Total portfolio up 2 basis points. So
Nice.
a little bit of a win.
So
Can't be mad at that.
what are you guys thinking? To go back to the AI conversation, you know, I think NVIDIA is lying, but do you think that this is a bubble right now, or do you think that we might see a small correction and then rally into the end of the year and the AI is here, the demand will come even with the recession? Like, people need to keep piling into this. They shouldn't be scared of the way the stock charts look. If you listen to people like Raoul Pal, who's a big name that people love, or, you know, big growth investors like that, Kathy Woods is another proponent of this, where they're saying, like, don't be scared, like, these stocks will continue to climb up. You should keep piling into them and just buy them and hold. And, you know, even if there's a correction, like, these will come right back to these prices. Like, what do you think of that narrative that seems to still be dominant even on a down day today? I was going through FinTwit and I'm like, why are people not buying puts? Why is everyone complaining about the market coming down? Like, you're all traders. Why are you not playing this? Like, the signals to me felt rampant. It felt like a very obvious turnover in the market coming around today. What do you guys think about that AI narrative, though?
Yeah, I think it's a very you know, my opinion on the hype behind it is that people need something to latch on in hard times. The market got so beat up in 2022 that, you know, that's one of the few glimmers of hope that people have in this bull trap. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I don't think that it's going to have as wide of a financial impact as most people expect. Sure, should have a lot of positivity in the market. It might make business processes more efficient, cheaper, provide the ability to widen margins, but otherwise, you know, I don't expect it to have that much of an impact on the financials. So I think it's a lot of hype. I think it's a lot of you know, we need something to latch on to and crowd, similar to, you know, the tech names that we saw in 2020, 2021 just explode. So I think that's the second wave of that.
So you called this a bull trap. You think we're still in a bear market at this point?
I do. And the rationale behind that is and I just published a paper on the Substack yesterday on this. If you look at the fixed income markets, we have a $800 billion debt wall coming due in 2024. Now, it might be a little bit early to start sounding the alarms, but, you know, just given the credit markets for this, given the durability of balance sheets, given the margin compression on the income statements, you know, I'm expecting a pretty fair amount of bankruptcies to come up. I think there was 120 something so far this year of defaults. Don't quote me on that number, but it's somewhere in there. And that's expected to get much worse in the next year.
I do have to say that I am very surprised at the speed at which this rally has happened. It's almost like unbelievable to see where we came from. And then, I mean, especially in the NASDAQ, these last, you know, 3,000 points seem like they happened in a matter of a month and a half. Like it's been a hard market to trade anything but long. At what point would you consider this a bull market outside of even with the fundamentals? Where does the market have to get to for you to say, okay, maybe this is not a trap, and maybe this is a market where the buyers do have control of the broader narrative?
If all of a sudden Jerome Powell just decides to drop rates down to zero interest rate policy again, I don't expect it to get any better. And the reason why, you know, going back to the fixed income markets, you know, you have a few options in regards to this. So let's hypothetically say, and I also have a good example of this on my Substack of a company in this very position. Hypothetically say you have a $500 million maturity coming up in 2024. Your operating income is about 100 million and your cash is about $10 million, give or take. How do you expect to cover that cost?
Well, you don't cover that cost unless you float more stock, or you're just raising more debt to cover the cost, basically.
Exactly. So you have a few options. You can refinance at a higher interest rate, which will be detrimental to their bottom line. You can raise capital through stock issuance, which will also be detrimental to your shareholders, as well as if your equity holders see this coming, they're going to sell and make your cost of equity that much more expensive. So you have very limited options. And then, you know, final option, you can default and do a restructuring.
That brings up a really good question for me to ask you. Given that and this rebalancing, I know the rebalancing is in the NASDAQ should be taking place here next week, right? How do you think, because what we've seen currently is these companies with crap tons of cash that are dragging the NASDAQ higher. You've got these major companies that are huge weightings, and when you look across the NASDAQ, some of the smaller companies are doing well, but that's not what's causing this NASDAQ to explode and go higher. You've got these, you know, mega caps that are just dragging this whole thing higher. Given that and the rebalancing, do you think that's going to have a compounding effect, especially given earnings that we saw today and people taking profits off the table? Do you think the rebalancing is just going to compound onto that, and we could potentially see an even uglier market next week?
Yeah, I was looking at that. What was it? Those top names account for something like 50% of the NASDAQ.
And it's insane.
Yeah, it's incredibly insane. It's egregious. But my thought process behind that is you have two ways to look at it. You have the people that are buying the individual names and the people that are buying the index. When you buy the index, it drags everything up. When you buy the individual names, it just bloats their market cap. So, with passive investing, as you were discussing earlier, that's going to drag up every single name in the NASDAQ. So you have that whole mentality behind it. When it rebalances, it'll give those smaller names a bigger percentage of the NASDAQ. So it might not be a terrible thing if you think about
Well,
it.
that's also why I brought it up, because those smaller names are going to be the names that are going to have significantly more trouble with debt. So you're not going to have, your Apple has enough cash that you're not worried about your Apples defaulting on debt. They have tons of cash on their books. Some of these larger names are not going to be in the same position as some of these smaller names. And now we're giving the smaller names a higher weighting of the index itself. And if you anticipate some of these smaller companies that are in trouble with maturing debt, in my mind, that would have a compounding effect, given that we're giving them a higher percentage rating of the index itself.
Yeah, so it all depends on how much of those companies' shares are attributed to the index and how much are traded on an individual name basis at that point. So,
well, even so, I
let's
mean, don't when somebody the people that are maintaining these indexes, they're going out and they're given, you know what I mean? They have to hold the companies to maintain the index. So they have to go out and buy and sell these companies on a daily basis to.
correct.
So how is that going to have? And my understanding was that essentially you've got these fund managers that are buying and selling and keeping everything balanced on a regular basis.
Yeah, correct. So their job is to match the index through the ETF vehicle, which is, by the proportionate amount of shares that are attributed to that specific company within the index. That's their primary job as far as that goes. So, it's hard to say how, they'll correlate as far as, if one company goes under, how's it going to affect the broader index? If it's 0.0002% of the index, it ain't going to do shit. But, if it's a little bit bigger of a percentage, sure, it can have a little bit of pull.
Interesting. Oh, yeah, I would think that would have a negative compounding effect, especially if you're bearish. I think that would be something that you'd be looking forward to, especially if you're bearish, given the fact that it's going to be some of these smaller companies that are going to, if you're bearish because of the debt that's pending and the increase in rates and the fact that they're going to either have to float more stock or refinance or default, I would think that would be a positive narrative for that bearish view that would give you even more conviction on that, the rebalancing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And think of it this way, as far as like the NASDAQ goes, this ship isn't going to be steered by those smaller firms. It's going to be steered by those big boys, Tesla, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft. It's going to be steered by these guys. They're the ones with the oars, are the ones that are basically the ship. These other guys are there just to go along with the ride. So kind of think of it more like that. If let's say Apple has a crappy earnings next quarter and has crappy guidance, that's going to have a significant effect on the NASDAQ's performance versus, I don't know, what's another company that's in the NASDAQ, like
Pepsi,
Carvana or whatever, like they have a crappy earnings. That's not going to do much to the total broader index.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking where given the price action, just strictly looking at price. I understand what you're saying from the broader macros perspective, but just given price, in my mind, we've been in a bull market for the last, I don't know how many months now. Because we just see a series of higher highs and higher lows.
Yeah. for a select group of companies. Now it's broadened out very recently, but only very recently. I feel like has it actually broadened out. I feel like it's been very consolidated to just an AI hype. There's not none of these value stocks have been really taken off. If you look at the Kathy Woods names, for instance, so, a lot of those smaller companies, they haven't moved hardly at all. And very recently, I've been looking and hunting for a lot of those different names, or even some of these small regional banks as well, for like who's not actually going to fall apart and doing well. Just kind of pick up those because, as it's broadened out, it creates some opportunity. But really, I haven't seen a broad-based bull market to make me really convinced that this is anything but a bubble. And I've kind of looked at the continued melt up to also be a symptom of all the money that was printed. That's just still slushing around in the market, even with the interest rates increasing. It takes 6 months for these hikes to actually affect the broader market and the economy. So I feel like a lot of what's happening right now, I was too bearish too soon as well. I mean, this whole rally has caught me off guard. I didn't make nearly as much on the way up as I should have. And so I've only just now feel like I got a really good handle on what things are going on, like in a macro sense. But I think that was my mistake, is like not anticipating how much money was still floating around, how much liquidity has still been provided by the Fed. I think that's more of like the symptom of what's going on, because it doesn't feel like things are great despite what the market might be showing right now.
No, I was going to say, so if you look at a few of the geopolitical aspects to it, so Biden administration just announced that they're going to be blocking semiconductor sales, and that's a lot of blocking semiconductor sales to China, and that's a lot of what's been more so affecting like Taiwan Semi, and what could potentially affect NVIDIA as far as their AI chip expansion.
Yeah.
I don't know. Given the prices here, I think you have to lean short on especially AI, NVIDIA, and some of these companies. It's just for me, it's just a matter of price. It's a matter of price action. And we've seen these massive rallies. And if I was forced to take a position in a juicy stock, which these stocks are juicy, like NVIDIA is a juicy stock. It's a good trading vehicle. There's liquid markets. There's tons of attention. Tesla is another one. I just look at the price action and am a contrarian and think, if I have to take risk in here, I'd rather be leaning to the short side.
Yeah. I will say that I did a bunch of recharting headed into this week, and it helped me time this pullback really well, do some Elliott wave analysis. And I gotta say, if we see like Tesla pull back to 240, which I've seen as like the max pullback, I think after that it could potentially test like all-time highs coming into the end of the year. And I think right now the market right now is only look at 3 months ahead. So even though we have this huge debt wall, I don't think the market's paying attention to that yet. I don't at all. Like I think we could still see a massive continued rally to the end of the year. And by price action, I guess you call it a bull market, but it definitely doesn't feel very bullish and about it though.
Well,
I mean, I think NVIDIA after this pullback could also, like, unless earnings is just a disaster, which I think it could be, maybe even then people just get excited, see it as a buying opportunity, and still stay hyped about AI, and then you see it still climb until the end of the year. I mean, I think it's very likely.
The thing that I was very surprised about today, given, let's be honest, I mean, it was a bit of a bloodbath. I mean, it could have, it was a solid down day. It wasn't a bloodbath, but it was a solid down day. If you were long tech, you got smacked in the face today. But you didn't see the VIX spike at all. The VIX was chill as could be. There was no fear that trickled back into the market. And really, the S&Ps were not affected nearly as badly as the NASDAQ, which, coming back into line, we talked about those pairs trades. You were using the SPY and the Russell, but I've been trading the NASDAQ and the Russell. I think the NASDAQ is slightly more extended. If you look at just the extreme, I like the extreme in the NASDAQ compared to the Russell better than the SPY, the Russell. And the SPY was only down, 30 points today, less than 1%. So really, the overall market didn't get nearly as clobbered as tech. If anything, I still like that trade better. Short tech, long Russell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a fan of that idea. I like you're probably because we were talking in the Discord about I was talking about going short SPY and long the Russell, and I think you mentioned like the Nasdaq's better. I think that's a good trade. Instead though, I've just picked out names for more alpha. So I've just instead of setting up that index pair trade, I just went for different names within the Russell and the Tesla, and then like Tesla, Nvidia. I close Coinbase, but I probably get back in short Coinbase because Bitcoin also looks like dead in the water right now. I thought this thing would at least go to 33,000, and it's not even. It can't get it up. It needs a blue chew or something.
I don't know. Coinbase has been a great trade. Like the call skew in there, if for people that like to sell options, the call skew in there, you could sell the 170 strike call in September for like almost $4, and it's $60 away from the money. So unless you think the stock is doubling again, there are fat, juicy premiums in there. So it's
Yeah.
been a great trading vehicle.
There was so much FOMO after the SEC decision with XRP, and I'm still maybe I don't understand XRP enough, and I understand the sentiment is probably something like if that lawsuit didn't pan out, then Coinbase will likely win all their lawsuits and be just fine, and so that policy risk within Coinbase has been eliminated. So maybe more funds are eager to get in because they're no longer scared of that. But I still don't see how any of this has caused any actual like money making potential for the company. Because if crypto doesn't move, if there's not more people buying crypto, if Bitcoin's not going up, then these small coins aren't going to do anything. You might get a short-term move out of XRP, but this isn't going to generate profits for Coinbase. It doesn't really help them for their next earnings report. So I as a trader, just thinking of the short term right now, like I'm not excited about that at all. Like I don't really care. So I just feel like it's overvalued right now. And I think after a disappointing earnings, you're going to see a lot of people panic out of it and be like,
Out of Coinbase.
yeah, out of Coinbase. Yeah. Yeah. It just feels too
I
soon.
am short strangles in there as well. So I'm short the 75 puts against the 170 calls. And the calls are losing juice really fast.
Yeah.
So pretty soon I'm going to have to roll that down. And it's actually just today I went from being bearish in there to my delta flipped positive because of this down move. So it's going to be time to readjust that. I don't know. So my understanding was the classification of it as a security or not, which allows basically it sets a precedent for other tokens and other quote unquote securities or not security. It basically just kind of settled the fact that whether or not we're going to classify these things as securities or not, which gives the ability for Coinbase to operate in a lot more future spaces. So for potential future growth is a very positive thing for them and other institutions.
Yeah. If we see a more rapid incline in the actual adoption of cryptocurrencies, but even just that possibility doesn't mean that you're going to actually get attention in the crypto space and then actually make money from it. I mean,
Well,
it's like they can enter in all these things and spend all this money to get more growth and offer these opportunities, but I don't see how it actually helps the company right now. Now, future growth might be great, but I still don't like the price for that. I don't know. I think you got another 5-6 years before some of this takes off. Now, the risk, and even for your short play, for going to 160, I mean, Coinbase might go to 160 if you see the SEC start approving all these funds to create these new Bitcoin ETFs or these spot Bitcoin funds that start to get approved, and then they start mass buying Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin takes off, and the market goes parabolic and freaks out, yeah, Coinbase maybe could go to 160. Like that's the risk I feel right now. But I also just feel like the SEC's tried so hard to fight this. I'm not sure how that pans out. It's too political, I feel like. And so I don't know. I don't know what you think about that.
You also got to remember, like in the US, who's in this space? If you want a chunk of this space, who's in it? It's just Coinbase. That's it. That's your only option. If you want to get into this space, who else are you going to buy? You're going to buy Robinhood. You don't even own your coins. You don't have the option to own your coins. So for anybody that actually wants anything outside of pure exposure to the price, you can't go to Robinhood. You can't go to Webull. You can't go to any of these other brokerages that are just giving you exposure, not allowing you to actually hold the coins. Coinbase is it. That's the only publicly traded company out there where you can participate in owning a company that's in this space.
Well, I mean,
I thought
you know,
Fidelity got into it a year or two ago.
yeah, and you could buy Grayscale potentially, and that's, I mean, especially
Well,
since
those are
that's
ETFs.
true, but
They don't track the spot. They track the futures.
right. And well, I mean, okay, if you're just looking for exposure, though, I mean,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. All these other companies don't allow you to own the actual asset. They don't allow you to own crypto. They give
Yeah.
you exposure to it. You can get, if you want exposure to it, you might as well go to the futures market and just buy the future.
Right. I guess the alpha for something like Grayscale would be like, okay, if this actually gets approved to go from a trust to an ETF, then it's at like a 40% discount from what it should be. So it's like an instant, just like
Yeah.
overnight spike. So,
Mhm.
but
We've talked about this before. The problem with those products is any product like that, whether it's a USO or the whatever that new Bitcoin product that they came out with, they all track the futures price. So they get their exposure through the futures market, which nobody explains to investors that these products that track futures prices are tracking a leveraged product. So there's a cost to carry, and there's backwardation or contango that you also have to eat the cost of or benefit from. Usually you end up eating the cost of it. So over time, these products have a huge drag compared to the actual spot price. So when you look at the spot price's performance and you look at these products that are designed to track the product through exposure through futures products, nearly everything that you look at outside of an anomaly is going to have a huge drag on a product like that. But your everyday investor doesn't even know what that is, doesn't have any idea what I just said.
no. Oh, do you have any opinions on any of this, Monty?
Nope,
Well-
he said it all. There's a lot
Yeah.
of risks involved, and you have your resets and rollovers, and not a lot of people, or not enough people, truly understand the additional underlying risks and fees that go into a managed futures account.
So we have all that political risk, but SEC, the government's been unfair with crypto, but they've also been unfair with energy, I feel, as well.
Mhm.
This whole clean energy push has just been, as someone who's done a bunch of research in nuclear energy and stuff, I mean, Germany's been pulling back from everything. I feel like they're going to have a bunch of issues come this winter. It feels completely asinine. You have even Canadian government officials getting some high fives from US constituents on comments like, oh, you want me to tell my constituents to eat uranium? I don't know if you saw those clips where they had people pitching uranium energy and they're like, oh, it's so horrible, there's so much toxic waste and it's bad for the environment, despite nearly anyone who's done any research in the space saying that nuclear energy is the best alternative. It's way better than solar or wind or different.
Exponentially better.
Oh yeah. So
exponentially better.
When do people come to their senses? Like, what is it gonna take? What do you guys think? What will it take for me to become a millionaire from all these uranium holdings that I've had for 3 years or more?
Sit tight and wait, man. Be patient.
It's a
man,
political thing.
So when do the politics change? Is it going to take? You know, I don't think any of the constituents right now, except for Robert Kennedy, have even done any significant mentioning of nuclear energy or even dismissal of, you know, I mean, this ESG nonsense. It's a giant sham. I think we can all agree on that, right? ESG is a complete.
Oh, without a doubt. I have such words for ESG, and I think I've gotten a little bit of trouble mentioning those words, but one a couple analysts, Goering and Rosenzweig, they put the best. So their energy in and out comparables for different sources, for renewables, for wind and solar, it's 1 to 5. 1 unit of energy in produces 5 energy out. For oil and gas, it's about 1 to 20, 1 to 30. For nuclear, it's 1 to 100. So it's just astounding that people are so sold on basically taking a step back in industrial progress for the sake of ESG. And you can look this up on Bloomberg, but my favorite article regarding wind power is the #1 product in landfills is wind turbine blades. They're indestructible. They're these carbon-based things that are meant to withstand wind constantly. So they're virtually indestructible. You need a diamond encrusted blade, saw blade to be able to cut through it. And they're just so massive. You have nothing you can do with it. You can't repurpose it. You can't do anything. So it just ends up in a fucking landfill. So yeah, definitely look that up later. It's a great read.
I have never even thought about that.
Yeah, I have very strong opinions against ESG. And another wholesaler mentioned to me that 90% of finance is sales and marketing, and ESG is absolutely the biggest sales and marketing ploy to date. It is a cash grab. It's a reallocation of capital that's been forced, not by performance, but by some higher ethical deal. And it's just such a huge cash grab.
Yeah. And that's the huge moral
guys-
issue, right? Is you got these big companies like BlackRock not doing their fiduciary responsibility and actually buying the good companies that will make your average American some money when they're 401k. Instead, they're chasing all this ESG garbage that isn't
Well,
good.
they're
long
going
term.
beyond
Doesn't
that.
make any sense. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Well, they're going beyond that. They're dictating, they're encouraging and promoting and changing. Look at Disney.
Oh, yeah.
Disney is getting destroyed. Like, it doesn't, like, at what point do you start firing some of these people that are making these terrible decisions over and over? And instead of saying, hey, this isn't working, what do? They double down. And it's like, okay, look at freaking Budweiser is another good example. Look at Target. Look at all these companies that are just solid companies that have blown their toes off for what? Because they've got on board the woke train, and it's caused nothing but pain for them. And they're good companies that people enjoy. And like, I mean, Target, I'm married. You're not married. You have a girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does she love Target? I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
I've ever met a woman that doesn't love Target. It's like the place to shop. It's like
Yeah.
Walmart on crack. It's like way nicer. But look at their stock price, and Disney's even worse. Disney is like the epitome of woke goes to die. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm long it here just because of price, but like, what's it going to take?
I could get on board with Target, even though I question how dumb management must be, not even just for political beliefs. Like, even if you don't agree with them politically, that doesn't even matter as much as just the sheer absurdity of being like, we're going to market a product that only goes to 0.00001% of the population. And we're going to make that our main marketing pitch right now. Like, the decision making there just seems so like obnoxious. Like there's no critical thinking there whatsoever. I feel, I
Virtue
guess
signaling
just
on crack.
well, I mean, yeah, just for a pat yourself on the back and act like you're a good person. I mean, well, you're not. This is going to make you a bunch of money. This is what your goal is, right? You're supposed to be a company that makes money. You're supposed to be a company that provides goods for the general public. You could just have those products and not make it like a huge ad campaign, and then you won't get this huge backlash. And how did you not anticipate to get backlash? But for Disney, I think Disney's even in a worse spot because
Yeah.
not only are they not backing down, which I'm shocked to see because everyone was so excited that they got rid of that old CEO earlier this year and they put Bob.
Oh yeah, Chapek and Iger back in.
Yeah, they put Iger back in. Iger is supposed to be this like badass. And I feel like he's doing way worse now. Like the recent decision making is crazy. They want to get into a fight with Florida now, and they want to get some of their old permissions back. Then they want to go push this woke stuff, which is clearly not working culturally. I feel like there's already been a shift away from that. And then on top of that, they're going to produce less shows. They're going to slow down their shows, which some people are saying, oh, that's great. But you're in a streaming war right now. This is not the time to pull back, especially in a recession. Like if I look at the historical data, people watch TV more than ever when things are rough. Like they look for a distraction. So like the companies who can continue shoving out content, you know, and the other thing is, I feel like in general, the content also sucks. Like someone, but this is very personal. But I feel like new Star Wars. I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. Why is The Mandalorian season 3 so much worse than the first season? Why are
Dude, I didn't even finish it.
Oh, I'm way behind. It sounds like I'm on 2.
It's so bad.
It's not even worth watching.
It's so
No.
crazy bad and disappointing. And I understand that maybe I'm a little old to be watching it, but it's so corny. I can't handle it. And so and so are a bunch of other shows. And now they're gonna slow down. So they're gonna slow down on making the bad content in hopes that, you know, it'll have what some people saying it'll have a more mystique about it, or it'll be more like cherished because it's more rare and it'll be more of an event when it comes out. But like, okay, to be an event, you actually have to have good content. Because right now, I feel like you're just pumping out trash TV for people to have to watch. If you want to make this an event, it has to actually be good, and it's not. So, like, that doesn't seem like an effective strategy. You know, Netflix has 1 million shows. They won't report how much views their original shows get because I think they suck generally. And I, you know, you don't see people on Twitter. You don't see Netflix originals trending on Twitter because everyone's talking about it because they suck. And so they just shove them out nonstop just to keep, you know, some trash TV for people to watch while they're doing other stuff, you know, listen to it on their phones or whatever, while they're working from home or something.
Yeah.
Were you guys old enough?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Or I was going to mention, not to interject, but you know, they're trying the same playbook that Netflix ran going into 2020, where when all the studios closed down, you know, look at their operating cash flow, look at their free cash flow, flip from negative to positive. And that's kind of the same predicament that Disney's in right now, to where streaming's not earning money. That is not profitable. Any streaming service, whether it's Discovery, Disney, HBO, whatever it is, it's just not a profitable business to be in. You just don't get the same ad revenue as you did from linear TV. And, you know, as we discussed, looking at Roku, which I should be releasing sometime next week, you know, it's just not a profitable business to be in. It's cool, it's convenient, but they just don't make any money. So that's kind of the playbook that Disney's running into, where park attendance is significantly down as people time their purse strings or whatever, their pocketbooks, so they can retain cash just in case of a downturn. Just given inflation, just given CPI, the consumer's pretty stretched thin, in my opinion, despite what the media says, just given the higher costs of goods versus, you know, our income. But, you know, getting back to Disney, I think they're in that boat to where they're going to pull back on content. They're going to try to retain capital as the economy kind of swoons down. You know, let the park attendants ride the wave, let their current log or backlog or whatever ride the wave, and then when things start to look more normal again on an economic basis, maybe go back to producing hopefully good content again instead of all this, I don't even know how to describe it, stuff that guys like you and me would never watch in a million years.
Yeah, I think Disney has one foot in the grave, honestly. I think when they pull back, someone steps in. Someone like Gary V, who's in NFTs and he's cool with the young kids and he's got all these new cartoon characters and he's started creating these short cartoon shows and stuff. And they are actually built around these good fundamentals of like, this is the hardworking character, this is the responsible character, this is the courageous character. It's corny, but it's great for little kids, and parents will be like, oh yeah, you can watch that all day. And his big goal is to build the next Disney. And I feel like this is the opportunity that he's sitting there going, oh yes, I have several hundred million to get this started. I could probably raise a few billion to jumpstart everything. I have connections everywhere, and I've already built my brand. I've already built up these characters. I have already so many people bought in, and this is where I can start to build that. Maybe even in the future, he builds theme parks as well. Maybe that takes off. I just feel like Disney's got one foot in the grave. If they don't turn around right now, they can't. I just feel like you'll just fall behind. Even and sadly, I think Star Wars will die with them because they probably won't sell that. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
could
know.
see-
I'm not that convinced, but I do see it as a possibility. I do. I do. I didn't until relatively recently, and it's
But I
there's only
can't.
so much stupid you can get away with.
How can you not make a good Star Wars movie? Like, I mean, how? How can you not? Like, that should be actually hard to do. That should be like a YouTube challenge or something. Like, I'm gonna actually try and make a bad Star Wars movie. It's just a naturally lovable like universe. It got all these creatures, all these storylines. There's so many things, especially for like young boys being a Jedi or a bounty hunter. Like that should be so easy to pull off. It's astounding to me. But I guess a lot of those things are toxic masculinity now, so you can't promote that. All right, so I mean, guys, got any more comments you want to add on that one?
I think we beat it. To
that
death.
covers it.
I think we did beat it to death as well. So we the other issue with a lot of this, right? These different politics, these cultural swings, it's not only just affecting energy, it's not only affecting what we view, but it's also affecting what we eat and what we drink. Like there's, the issues with Russia, the shortages that are likely going to come around. I still think I was talking about this like 8 months ago, and I guess I haven't recently on YouTube, and I still think this is a huge issue. If these economies start rolling over and we keep pulling back, in Europe, it's very popular to say, oh, we need to use less fertilizer because it's so bad for the environment. So we just need to have less food. And they say that like less food isn't going to be detrimental to the population, especially to the countries that they export to. They like there's not going to be a huge squeeze. I know, Noob, you were talking about different ways to profit from this. Like you're long on wheat right now, right? Or you're thinking about it?
I'm trading it. I currently have, well, when it had that 50 or 60 point pop, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was selling calls into that just because, and this is indicative of kind of what you're saying. The market is anticipating some severe upside price action in wheat, specifically wheat. I haven't looked at like corn or beans, but when I looked at the call skew in there, it was extremely pronounced. Extremely. I'm talking you could sell 300 points away from the money and still collect significant premium. So the market doesn't do that unless it's anticipating a large upside move. Now it doesn't always happen, but that's just where the pricing of those things are currently saying the market is potentially going to move. It's significantly skewed to the upside. So I'm trading it. I think I'm kind of neutral in there right now, just with a short premium. But
What would you say to someone who says how that's like immoral to do? if you, let's say you were trading it with the anticipation of like, oh, a bunch of people are starved and there's going to be a bunch of lack of supply there. And someone says, I can't believe you're profiting off of something like that. That's awful.
Well, I guess I would say, is it morally wrong because it harms somebody, or do you hold the stance that it's morally wrong because it's it harms somebody in a way that's something that's quote unquote a necessity, i.e. like price gouging for water, or price gouge. Like if you're holding the stance that it's only certain ways that you're able to harm someone else, because let's be honest, anytime we take a trade and we benefit from it, someone else is on the other side of that trade and they're being theoretically harmed by it, right?
Right.
So is it the harm that you have an issue with, or is it the fact that it's quote unquote necessities that you're harming them through taking advantage of quote unquote necessities?
Well,
And what's the alternative?
if I put my feet in a communist shoes, I would just say, well, you're just being greedy and opportunistic on terrible things going on in the world, and that's just ethically and morally bad and hurting your soul and bad for society to promote such ideas.
I would say that it adds to the liquidity of the market, and that the more liquid a market is, so the more participation you have, the fairer of a market you create. So you create more liquidity, more participation means fairer prices for everyone. And the market is more likely to find that fair price when you have a two-sided market, where as opposed to a one-sided market. Look at things that exploded. What happens when things explode in price, whether it's GameStop, whether it's wheat back through when the Russian invasion happened, whether it's I think it was one of the car rental companies that had a short squeeze, like AMC. What happened in all those situations? Well, you had a market that it got unbalanced and didn't have the sellers there on the other side. You had nothing but buying, 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 buying. And there wasn't a two-sided market in those situations to the extent that it was enough to keep everything balanced. And you saw the negative impact of all those different situations. The more liquidity you have, the harder it is for those two-sided market or the one-sided market to happen, and the more likely you are to have fair prices in reality.
Yeah. And I know Monty, you were doing some research or about water scarcity even, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just with the droughts across the United States, you're seeing how water is being further divvied up, especially in California, whether it's going to be used for hydroelectric farming, whatever it may be. It's just incredible how water is, or I guess the scarcity of water, how it can affect different necessities in our lives.
It,
Just mhm.
oh, continue.
I was going to say, just to think about, the fact that we're building all these chip foundries across the country, which require a tremendous amount of water to, manufacture chips. Just incredible that we're expecting that those are going to resolve a lot of our sourcing issues when, there's this severe of a shortage.
I didn't think it was about a water shortage. I've also never looked at water futures as well. Dude, have you ever looked at water futures?
Not until you sent me that text today. I was like, water futures? You can trade water? And I was like, I gotta find out how to do this. So I did. I was like on the CME's website looking at water futures. I was like, holy crap. Okay. Hey, anything where there's a market, the markets are all the same. It doesn't matter what the product is. If you understand markets, the product's irrelevant for the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
I'll trade whatever.
I had no clue there was even a water scarcity until Monty had brought it up, in fact. So, and I
I have heard
definitely
I've heard of it before, especially over in that area. It's
Yeah, what is it?
increasingly more difficult to find.
The Colorado River, something like that. That's just drying up. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's worth a read. I can't remember. I think it was a Doomberg article. It was one of those guys, but it is definitely worth a read to understand the implications of that drought. It's just incredible. Everything that is dependent on that flow of water.
That's crazy.
Would we be better if we just kind of like annexed California and pushed it out into the ocean?
Yeah, we can just block
No.
off that part of the river, retain it all for ourselves, and let them, float away into woke world of Disney.
We could just put Newsom on a boat and probably do the same thing. I probably
The
have
same
the
effect.
same effect. Yeah. You know who else is having a drought right now, though? It's Facebook's new app, Threads, which is, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it has just dropped with its user base over 50% pretty much within a week. I mean, usually these social media applications have a pretty hard fall off if they don't succeed, but it's usually not so substantial especially, and I feel like people aren't mentioning this enough, when the application it's paired with, where to join it is just a button away for 1.2 billion users, I think that's the right number, that already use Instagram. So like literally all they have to do is just click a button to join Threads, and even then you still can't get a conversion, or to get that conversion to even continue to use the app. What do you guys think is causing that? Why is that going so poorly? And I'm gonna preface this with the fact that if you look at the option chain for Facebook, there is 30, 40, there's $120 million bet that Meta stock price by next year will hit $600. So there's not a lack of people who think that Threads is going to work out, in my opinion, or maybe they're betting on a TikTok ban or something, but someone's thinking that Meta's doing something right. But when it comes to the actual reaction from, the actual user base, people hate Threads from what I've seen. So like, have you guys used Threads at all? Have you checked it out?
I'll let you talk first, but I just want to mention how incredibly awesome that segue was.
It was pretty good. Oh, I mean, if you looked at the stock price, what, a couple days ago when they announced it, maybe a week or a week and a half ago, whatever it was a $50 billion idea when it was announced. That's the market cap addition that was added on to the stock as a result of them announcing it. But apparently it wasn't a 50 billion idea, because today it basically gave back the whole 50 billion in one bad day. So I think the market has spoken, and maybe it wasn't such a hot idea.
I mean,
I can't imagine it's going to be bad for them in the long term. It's going to add to, like, there will be people that use it. Is it going to turn into like a Google Plus down the road? Maybe. We all remember Google Plus when they tried to get into that space. They just didn't dedicate enough resources, and it was kind of like let's get into this space, and then they didn't really stick with it or fight for it or anything like that, and it just kind of withered away. Maybe that'll be what this turns into. I think
Google Plus,
the timing was good, especially given the fact that Twitter just went private, and there's a lot of people out there that hate Elon Musk and hate Twitter and have left Twitter. And I think it was opportunistic and good timing. We'll see if it actually pans out. I'm skeptical.
I'm skeptical on how many people have actually left Twitter. I think Twitter's probably grown since going private and Elon taking over.
It absolutely has.
Yeah,
absolutely has.
I hope so.
Yeah. I don't.
I never use Twitter, but now I do.
Yeah.
Are you saying there's fake news out there? Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I used Threads for a bit, and the first thing, well, what you said, being the timing being good, I think the timing's what actually screwed them, because if you read my TikTok comments, lots of people are saying, well, it's brand new, like they put it out early, it wasn't finished yet, and so the product, when it improves, then people will go to it. But I feel like if you have a bad launch, you're just screwed. It's like all these new this might not be the best analogy, but when these new video games come out, when this new Fallout game comes out, or when Cyberpunk comes out, or these really big name video games come out and the game's not complete and it's buggy and it sucks, like they never make those profits back. Like it never comes back. They have to do big sales to get people to buy the game and actually play it. Like they always cut how much they can actually make when the initial product's bad, because then everyone's like, it's crap, don't buy it. And then something else comes out, people just buy that instead and they forget about it. The hype's dead so fast. And I just feel like you're gonna run into the same thing with Threads, and maybe Facebook has tried. Maybe Facebook, what I think is, or I should call them Meta. I think they'll probably run into the same trap where they're probably gonna dump a bunch of money in marketing, over time to try and get people to get back into it. Say, oh, we just added this and we just added this. Look at these new features, and it just never gets off the ground. It never helps at all.
And now, what they should have done?
What? Oh, I want to hear
They
this.
should have just bought. They should have just bought True Social and rebranded.
I forgot True Social.
You can buy True Social for pennies on the dollar now. I haven't looked at that ticker, and I don't even remember what it is. DWAC.
I think so.
Is it like $2 a share now?
Wasn't the SPAC supposed to transfer over? Isn't that just the SPAC? Actually, it just spiked in the after hours today.
It's up. Yeah,
you
up.
see that?
Up $16 a share, $3. So it's up like 20%.
I wonder what happened there. That's
Let's
interesting.
see what the news says. They settled with the SEC
over
for fraud charges with Trump. That's strange.
With the SEC over misleading investors.
So he didn't mislead. Wow.
Well, they settled. It says. It doesn't say they didn't mislead. It says they settled.
Well, apparently they were sued because they didn't tell buyers that it was created to buy Trump's media company.
That's what SPACs are.
I mean, they're gonna buy a company.
Have to disclose.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's a SPAC.
They still paid an $18 million civil penalty fee, which is not a lot.
You know what's actually kind of funny?
What?
When you look across the broad market of SPACs relative to the rest of the SPACs, DWAC is a success story. It really is.
So true.
It really is.
So true.
It really is. DraftKings is the only other one that I can think of that's a success story. And DWAC, like, what can you name another SPAC that's not trading for like 20 cents right now?
Yeah, they all just flopped after going public. It was Lucid, egregious.
I think Lucid was a SPAC.
Lucid was a SPAC. Which I don't know if they make it. I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I mean, it's really, it is really interesting.
Story.
You like Lucid Story?
I love it how they went public. What was it, over a decade or so ago? Went bankrupt, brought back private, and then went public again. It's just like,
remember when Apple was going to buy them?
Yeah.
Everybody was saying Apple's going to buy Lucid. Apple's going to buy Lucid, and it was trading like $60 a share. Everybody thought that Apple was going to buy them. You remember that? Back when it spiked, that was the rumor going around, like FinTwit and all the Reddit channels back when it was like $60 a share.
When that was all going on, I had a lot of fund managers telling me that Apple, the most likely buy for Apple would be Fisker. And so I never bought into that.
All I know is I shorted it and I made good money on it.
Oh yeah. I only
how could you not?
I only thought Lucid was the only thing I liked about Lucid. I thought I liked was the Saudi Arabia backing. So pretty much you got a bunch of money that can be poured in to keep this company afloat. And then the founder was the guy who, the main engineer for Tesla. And I was like, that might be an interesting combo. But that never, now I think Saudi Arabia might be more likely to just let this thing die, just be
Well,
dead
I
in the
talked to a
water.
Saudi, I talked to somebody from Saudi that is interested in the markets 2 weeks ago, and they basically said that the government has contracted for, like the Saudi government has contracted for certain um, vehicles and government fleets over there. So the government over there is going to be putting investment into Lucid via purchasing EVs from them. So I don't know if they're going to let it die. It sounds like, according to this person, I haven't checked out to see whether or not it's true, but I mean, he's from Saudi
I think
and
that's huge if it's
he
true, but
thinks long term that they are going to put some money behind it.
I would like to see a rumor like that actually reflected in the $7 stock price that it's fallen to, but yeah. I
Well, to be
think
fair, when you look across the whole EV market, it's the same story everywhere you look, except for what's the one that's recently been riding, Rivian. And I've seen more Rivians on the road now too. It's a common thing
I
to
have
see more and more Rivians.
I might have been wrong about Rivian. I thought Rivian was gonna be dead in the water. I thought their newer management team with no experience was given way too much money, expanded too fast, and was gonna end up eating it because of it. And they still might, you know. That's with the debt wall coming up. I mean, one of the things that I saw someone talking about was the huge loan that Ford just took out, similar to the huge loan that they took out before the '08 crisis. And that allowed them to be one of the only manufacturers to not have to ask the government for a bailout, because before banks tightened up borrowing, they took out a huge loan and they were able to ride out the turbulence without a bailout from the government. And they actually just did a very similar move just this month. And I thought that was really interesting to see as well. So there's some people rumors about that as well, as like, okay, what did Ford just see that they're making that move right now, taking out this huge loan? A lot of people are saying it's so that they can produce more EV vehicles, but if you actually look at the demand for the EV vehicles, like they're doing awful, like so bad. I think they sold a fraction of the trucks that they were expecting. Their hybrids aren't selling very well either, despite the fact that the newest research shows that hybrid vehicles are actually better for the environment than electric vehicles. No one tell Elon, but
Oh yeah, I saw that opinion piece in the journal the other day. It's what, like,
yeah,
the amount of materials to produce one electric can produce 70 hybrids.
yeah,
For real?
yep.
Oh yeah.
So
I've
that
I've
Yeah, not
always
to
wanted to see an in-depth study on all of these EVs in comparison, even to like a gas car. It's something that's, I imagine, it would be nearly impossible to do, to figure out the carbon emissions for the whole process of, mining the materials. Have you guys listened to that Joe Rogan podcast about where he talks to the guy that goes over to Africa into these mines and
oh
talks about
yeah,
the conditions in which this nickel that's being mined and everything for,
from lithium.
yeah, atrocious. That,
Oh
besides
yeah.
all that, just like the carbon footprint of start to finish these vehicles and the disposal of what gets done with it afterwards. Like, I'd love to
Or lack
read a
of.
study on, yeah, I'd love to read a study that looks at the entire process from start to finish and what the actual quote unquote carbon footprint of the process is.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
would like to
mining
see that.
is
I think there's been
wild.
some smaller subset studies of that, but I don't know if there's ever been like a big comparison between electric, hybrid, and gas. I assume is what you're wanting, right?
Well, yeah, just
Yeah.
yes, but like, my understanding is that the whole process is too difficult to do that because there's so many different factors that go into it from start to finish.
He wants to know like the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, like the total breadth of carbon emissions from start to end on manufacturing to, you own your
Oh,
car for 10 years, time to get rid of it from start to end. Yeah.
well, the whole
And yeah,
process.
I can't imagine it being easy.
No, I can't imagine, but I can't imagine that. I don't know. I probably shouldn't guess on something that I just have no even reference point to fathom.
Well, until we get our power grid off of fossil fuels, it's a moot point because we're using fossil fuels in a lot of cases to power these EVs. So it's like, come on,
Mhm.
what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You can
Well, the
feel good
motto
about
is as
driving
long
your
as
EV, but
Well,
Yeah.
and it, what were you gonna say, Monty?
Oh, I was gonna say, as long as it's not in my backyard, it doesn't matter. You know?
That's exactly how they treat it, right? Well, we need to
Mhm.
stop drilling for oil here. It's like, okay, that just means that the country with less clean policies and efficient practices is going to do more of it to compensate for the lack of that we do here. So you're not doing anything for the environment, dum dum, not even a little
Mm-mm.
bit. Like it's so incredibly stupid, quite mind boggling. And when it comes to who probably creates the least emissions is the Navy. So it's all their giant ships have mini nuclear reactors on them. They don't have to dock for 22 years. And the military seems to do what's efficient. I don't know why the rest of the government can't do that. So it's absolutely ludicrous. I also don't know why commercial hasn't taken that. Like these big cargo ships or barges haven't adopted some. Maybe they're just super expensive. Technology is too hard. I can't imagine it'd be
I
at the end of the
think
day.
I think the framework is going to be updated, and I want to say 2028. I want to say, I can't
Okay.
remember. I had a big discussion a couple years ago. One of my PMs I worked for, but it was when all the supply chains kind of broke down, when long hauls were no longer flying, and you couldn't just put excess cargo in those planes. You know, you had to resort to cargo ships, and there was that big constraint. And my question was, why don't we just build more ships? And ultimately, that's what it came down to. You're going to have these new emissions regulations or frameworks coming online in the next half a decade or so. And, you know, you don't want to put a new ship out that's just going to be taken out of the water in a year.
Okay, yeah. No, that makes sense. And then
Yeah, so it's
hopefully
coming.
so given all that, where do you guys think oil? Like nobody's talked. We talked about energy, but like the most traded energy commodity out there, oil, probably second, natural gas. Um, where do you see oil here? Like oil has kind of made a run for the roses here, and we're at the top of this range where we've been in now for uh 6 to 8 months at least.
Hmm.
Do you think that we see, given the rest of the commodity prices all kind of spiking here, do you think oil is going to follow suit? And do you think we're going to break out of this $80 range in oil here in the next near future?
It's tough, you know, when Saudi and the rest of OPEC announced they were making production cuts, you know, price per barrel just kept dropping. So, you know, it's tough to say where the supply and demand balance or imbalance is, but you know, I'm long-term bullish on oil, and just you know, to put it shortly, you know, the domestic decline curve and the Permian Basin and other oil rich basins like the DJ, you know, it's a lot of the tier one wells have been drilled, completed. They're on the back end of production for their higher end wells. So, you know, they're trickling down to tier two, tier three level wells. And it's just going to continue to get harder and harder to produce domestically. Now, that said, Exxon has this mega project for like 500,000 barrels a day on the coast of Guyana that's coming online. And what they say the next 2, 3 years or so, I think they're getting their approvals and getting everything set up over there. But you know, that's gonna cause a huge spike in supply for oil. So you just never know, you know, like looking at China, for example, that was supposed to be a major catalyst for oil. That was supposed to be a major catalyst for metals like steel and copper. get their economy back up and running, get the real estate industry back up and running, and spike demand for those commodities. But that never happened. Same thing for oil. People are supposed to be going back to work, taking their big Lunar New Year trips, things like that. And that's kind of been 1 foot out, 1 foot in. So you're just not seeing this huge spike in oil. And then lastly, I need to catch up on the article. I saw a headline about the SPR being replenished today by God, who is it? It's the guys that run Macro Voices, that podcast. A lot of what we've been hearing on the SPRs that's been continuing to get drained for the last 6 months or so, despite what our administration has been saying about replenishing those coffers. So there's a lot that goes into this, it seems like.
I feel like it's another recession warning that it has it. Although if you look at futures say that the price is gonna break out here soon. But I
I was
feel
gonna
like
say, like,
are you looking at the futures
have you
right
guys
now?
looked at? Well, yeah, I'm looking at copper actually. Given what he just said, I'm looking at copper, and not a technician, but I see quite a long-term flag forming here. If you look at the copper prices over on like a 3-year chart, we seem to be coming to a point where it's either that we are going to break out to the upside or downside
How
very, very soon here.
I'm not someone that looks at copper. Do you look at copper at all, Monty? I know there's a lot of institutional guys where like they'll base their whole macro theory off of how copper's doing and use it as a giant signal for recessions and stuff. Are you informed on some of that?
I don't follow the prices. I follow steel a lot more than copper,
Okay.
but I think a lot of the driving factor behind copper, at least today, is electrification of the grid going to happen, and our electric vehicles going to become more prominent. I can't remember the tonnage difference that when comparing ICE vehicles to EVs, but EVs just take a substantial amount of copper just to get those things running compared to traditional ICE vehicles. So I think that's one of the big uh, macro super cycle factors that a lot of analysts were looking at. And then as far as steel goes, I think steel would be a good indicator, looking at the auto industry, looking at building supplies, looking at roads, bridges, oil and gas, drill rigs, things like that. I think that would be also a good indicator of the broader performance of the market or the economy.
Will it, or will it be a false indicator because of all the money that the government's dumping into it right now with Build Back Better?
Yeah, and that's challenging. I actually just wrote a couple articles that pertain to that specific topic. And if you look at, so, going back to our discussion last week, a lot of what I look at are the specific steel, iron and steel producers, to where they have consistently throughout this last year, I think Cleveland Cliffs alone have raised their steel prices like 7 times throughout this entire year for their minimum selling point. So it's, I don't want to say we're in a bull market or bear market, but it looks like, the market is heavily controlled by these few players, especially Cleveland Cliffs. They have a very vertical outreach on the production, the mining of iron, all the way to the casting and forming. So, there's a lot of sway in the market and few hands in steel. And given that they have the ability to demand a higher price and people are offloading and taking that price, I think that says a few things. It says that they need the steel to produce cars, to produce infrastructure, or, I don't know, they just need the inventory so they don't miss out.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't trade a lot. I don't trade a lot of metals outside of gold and silver, so I don't follow copper that much myself.
gold and silver look
Occasionally.
bearish right now, don't they? I don't look at them much, but last I glanced at it, it didn't look appealing to me.
Well, I mean, it's hard.
Is that 1970?
I was gonna say it's hard to
When you're looking at gold, are you looking at GLD? What are you looking at?
/GC, the gold
Okay.
futures.
Okay.
I'm on Trading Economics looking at gold per ounce.
I mean, and it's been in an uptrend since October, November of last year.
Yeah,
God, I just
It
what
still
was
hasn't
it?
broken out of the uptrend.
could not imagine holding this long term.
What was the
blows
what was
my
the theory
mind.
of pricing gold? It was the inverse of real rates. So real
Oh,
rates being nominal minus inflation. That's how you price gold, right?
I don't know actually. That sounds right.
I don't know. I've always just viewed it in relation to the dollar, not necessarily rates.
Yeah, so I think the theory was I can't remember if it was to track it or the inverse of it. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but it's supposed to, go in line with where real interest rates follow. So what's our base rate? Like 5.25, something like that. Inflation's running down to 3 or something, whatever it may be. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting at with
Are you
that, but
do you trade rates at all? Are you trading this yield inversion here with the yield spread?
I should be, but I don't have the capital to do so. So I'd very much be buying short-term treasuries and short to long term. I mean, that's such a good play right now.
You can there's products out there where you can get much more granular if you want small exposure in not the bonds themselves, like the bond futures, but the yields have micro products on them, so you can get the margin is ridiculously low, ridiculously low, and it moves like you're looking at one contract is going to move anywhere from like 30 to $100 a day. So you can scale that to whatever size you want. And I think it's / if you're looking at the 210 spread, it's / 10Y against / 2YY are the tickers. And I've been, anytime that we continue to invert, I add to it. And then when we see any type of revergence or a narrowing, I scale back out, and I've been doing that, and it's been a great trade. And it's like, how do you not take it at this point, given where we are? I mean, we're back almost to 1% again.
Oh, seriously,
in the inversion, I think today it hit 0.95.
it's like free money. It's just incredible how inverted this curve is right now. I mean, looking at the
But
3-month.
That's a way that retail customers, those products allow retail to trade. Like you, even if you don't have a lot of capital, if you got an account with 10, 20 grand, you can trade rates with those products.
Yeah, send me a link to for the ticker signs after the call, and I'll take a look into those a little bit more.
Sure.
So to step away from bonds then and kind of circle back to the whole conversation with EV vehicles and potential recession and I'm just completely blundering this transition actually. Let's talk about Elon.
No. Elon versus what's his
Elon
face?
parody.
Yeah, who's
gosh.
winning that fight? Elon or Zuck?
I wanted to talk about, has Elon been a force of, well, okay, we could talk about Elon versus Zuck. Zuck wins.
Yes.
Well, what I
obviously.
really want to know,
Yeah.
what I really want to know is who's running the Elon Musk parody account on Twitter. Is that Elon Musk?
Oh, the not Elon Musk account. I have
Yeah,
no
yeah.
clue, but it's pretty
I
funny account though.
I bet you $100 it's Elon Musk.
Yeah,
That would be the perfect parody
It's
account.
it would be the perfect parody account. But I mean, he was literally. I don't know if Elon Musk keeps up with stuff like Andrew Tate, because I noticed that the account today was posting a lot about
Oh,
like,
yes,
would you
he
vote
does.
for me or for Andrew Tate? You think he
Oh,
does?
you know Elon does. Yes, he does. He
Really?
He's
absolutely
gotta.
does. He's in that sphere. He's in that circle of, yeah, he
You think
does.
they talk to one another? Because you're Elon. If you're interested in someone, you
No,
can just talk to
no.
them. No,
They're
okay.
probably
I
pen
don't think they
pals.
probably.
Pen pals.
I don't think. I don't think they're pen pals. But I think he knows what's going on. I think he's a, yeah. That's. I mean, that's the circle. Yeah. No, he definitely is aware.
Hmm.
Tate offered to train him.
For
Oh yeah,
what?
that's right.
Oh, that's
He
right.
offered to
For the
train him for the
MMA.
fight.
That's right. But I guess Elon would have to fly out to Romania because Tate's under house arrest right now. And that might be the most viewed YouTube video ever if he did that, by the way. You know,
Dude,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he'd still get beat.
and actually that's a thing when people say that Twitter's dropped off in the amount of users. Now that Elon's added how many views some of these videos get, like holy crap, these are bigger than YouTube numbers. You know, some of these YouTube's been banning different podcasts and stuff with Robert Kennedy, which I hate to see because I think YouTube right now is in a position to just completely dominate streaming. Like just completely derail everyone. I'm waiting for someone to start their own studio and just get advertisers for their TV show and to run it completely on YouTube. Through like YouTube.
There's
Premium
your
or
truth
something.
media.
Yeah.
No, but Rumble. I mean, what do you guys think of Rumble? There's a publicly traded company that's in direct competition and quote unquote is the censorship free place to go and stream.
Well,
Are you guys familiar with Rumble at all?
I just Rumble, why Twitter now interests me now that it shows views is I feel like they're trying to position themselves against Rumble because one of the first things Elon did was improve video quality on Twitter, which I don't know why that hadn't been done sooner, and then also show the amount of views. And if you look at, a video that got banned off YouTube that would usually only get like 4 million views, it's now getting 8 million on Twitter. And if you take Elon at his word, he says it's not even counting the total amount of views correctly still. And so it's still not counting a lot of those views as it appropriately should. Now, he might be just hyping it up, but I don't see a reason why he would. It's not like there's a stock price that it affects. So, Rumble, I just feel like it's not getting that amount of traction. When I was looking at where I wanted to do live streams and stuff, I considered Rumble. I noticed that my Rumble account, which I never look at, has also actually been getting some attention. Because I just have my YouTube videos automatically uploaded. But every time I go on Rumble, I'm like, this website's trash.
So I want to
why have we not approved it?
I want to point out something you had mentioned. So speaking of banned personnel and Andrew Tate, Tucker Carlson's interview of Andrew Tate has 94 million views on Twitter.
I saw that. That's
insane.
It's the most viewed interview ever like in history, and that is wild to me.
And the fact that YouTube would say no thanks.
Oh yeah, no thanks. We don't want the most viewed.
That Fox News said no thanks.
Yeah,
like what the fuck are they thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I think Fox News is dead too.
Who's gonna go on when their greatest host is gone?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's there's lots of speculation on what happened. Lots of people think it's because he criticized Big Pharma, but
yeah, BlackRock. There's a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, but
he was.
But I think the popularity there is pretty substantial. I think Twitter,
self-evident.
Elon, for all the criticism Elon gets, he found the only solution that I think makes any sense, where you don't censor stuff, but you allow his community notes thing. His community notes solution, I think, is brilliant because I find those community notes so less triggering than the stupid copy paste notification that Spotify even uses, YouTube uses, where like the CDC says blah blah blah. Even if you say COVID
Oh my
once,
God.
people are literally like calling COVID like the virus, or like it's Voldemort now. No one wants to say it out loud so they don't get the stupid little label at the bottom of their video, the disease that now should not be named. It's ludicrous. And so Elon's solution to that was like, we'll just have the community upvote who they think is reputable, and then allow those people to add notes to post. And if people dislike them, they'll be taken off. But if not, they'll stay. And I think it's hilarious to see almost every single thing Biden tweets get corrected. Like a little community.
Oh my God, seriously.
It makes me laugh
They don't
every
tweet
time.
any stats anymore. No
Yeah.
more stats for that reason.
Yep. It is so hilarious to me. And you know, it even happens to Elon. For all the criticisms that he gets, he doesn't complain when the community corrects him on stuff. And I love it, but I also just, it makes me worried about how many people are so brainwashed that they don't like a feature like that. Because who wouldn't like a feature like that? I don't. My followers, I'll say something in the video that's wrong, and I'll see a dozen comments saying, "Hey, you're a dummy. Like, why this isn't true? This is off, or that was a stupid thing you said." And I'm like, "Oh, crap." I don't want to say stupid things. So I appreciate the feedback or the correction so that I don't continue to say dumb things. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. Like, I'm completely unaffected by some random person's insults as well. Like, I don't have a fragile ego like that. I think that's what's wrong with a lot of these people. I don't know why you wouldn't absolutely love a feature like that.
Well, because if you're an ideologue and you
Oh, yeah.
worship at the altar of wokeness, then some of these things are just verboten. They can't be said. And if you allow them to be said, then people's worlds explode. And that's why you would be opposed to it, because you're an ideologue and it's a quasi religious religion at a certain point.
But some ideologies are not crap. I prefer to call them cultists at this point.
Well, whatever. You know what I mean? They've taken it
Yeah.
to a point where it's like, okay, it's not even compatible with reality, and everybody can see it. However, they're going down with the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have to silence your opposition to prove yourself right, you got a problem.
Well, and you know what? I think the bigger problem is like, I don't know how far we get into this, but like with the Robert Kennedy stuff, everyone's calling him anti-vax. He has all this pushback on the vaccine stuff. I am not like a PhD doctor or anything, but I mean, I majored in biochemistry, biotechnology. I designed vaccines, and so I know how to read this research. Like I know, and he gets things wrong. Like it should not be that hard to debate him, because he genuinely like misinterprets data all the time and gets things wrong. And still they won't like have a discussion with this guy. Now, I'm not saying everything he says is wrong, but he makes mistakes. And when I listen to him, they're not like in some cases it's like, well, that was a bit ridiculous. But his overall message that we should question these things and that we should push back on big pharma and to discuss these topics in general, that sentiment I can completely get behind. And when you don't have a conversation about this, then you know, and what we're all the scientists saying on Twitter is that we're not debate. We don't debate. We're not debate bros. We're not YouTube debate bros. We don't debate things. I'm like, okay, then do a YouTube reaction video and just play whatever he said and then pause it and then say what you're going to say. I mean, it's very easy. You don't have to debate him. You could even just do it from the comfort of your home and control all the elements there so that you could still get your message out. It's not that hard. These people are smart. They should be able to figure that out. But it irritates me so much. Like, clearly you can use social media and at least enter into a broader conversation with society about this and just put it out there. The fact you wouldn't even do that just makes you look like a coward. You're a coward at that point, you know?
Well, isn't science supposed to be debated? For example, you see 10, 20 studies on the same topic and you have mixed results on either or side. You know, isn't that the fucking point of the scientific method? Like, if you can't question science, you know, it just goes back to you silence your opposition, prove yourself right. You know, it doesn't make you right. You're just saying you're right. You're writing the rules.
Yeah.
In science, it's theoretical. Everything is theoretical based on probability and statistics at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to be able to test it to prove it.
Well, and the other issue is that there are so many PhDs, and all of them have to do a different study to get their PhD. And so there's all these studies going on, but not all PhDs are created equally. Like there's some people who are a good server at a restaurant, and then there's some that suck. There are some PhDs that suck. Not all research is created equally. And then you get people who don't who may have studied the research to the extent that they can interpret the data that they read from the research report, but do not have the mastery of the material or the space to differentiate what is a good study from what is a bad study. And so then you get people talking about studies that don't have like a third party checking the research, or didn't properly separate or don't even just look at how many references the study has to see if it's even considered relevant within the community, And so that's some of the stuff that I see Kennedy do all the time. It's like, well, I mean, dude, you're reading this obscure paper that no one's referenced in like 20 years. I think if it was relevant, someone at least would have once like referenced it in their research. Obviously, that would be a cause to dig deeper into like what here seems off, or was in the practices that they held like was out of touch, And when I do a lot of these debates on TikTok, I run into the same thing where people don't understand that not all research studies are as relevant to others or have done to the same level of scrutiny, So it just doesn't hold up as well. And basically, when you actually have a background in it, that's basic stuff. But when you don't, you're just like, well, I read this research study and it's a research study with a doctor. So what do you know? It's like, well, it irritates me a lot. It's a very triggering phenomenon that
It
I think.
extends beyond that too. It extends to any type of source that you use. When you have someone that controls the broader narrative, and when there's no validity given to any of the sources that would generate a possible opposing narrative or an opposing view, when that stuff is out of hand dismissed because of the source that it came from, then you completely shut down the conversation. You go into these conversations with people and they want sources, and you provide them sources. However, your sources are coming from a place that they view as illegitimate, and vice versa. So it's like it just completely shuts down all conversation surrounding it, because obviously it's very increasingly difficult to find like non-biased information, and there's narratives that are being spun everywhere. And to be able to have a conversation with somebody that's bringing data and representing a message in a certain way because of how it's being presented all over, whether it's news sources or studies or whatever it is, there's bias that creeps in, whether it's through the funding of these studies. The funding gets gets given out based on what's being researched. So
Right. And that's a big
if
one.
you're
It's
going to
like,
fund, yeah, so if you're only going to fund research that's trying to prove certain points, then of course you're going to get results that, and then when it comes to the media surrounding it, it's obviously all biased in one direction or another. So you can't have conversations when we've destroyed all of the references to each other's opposing views. So like if you come to me and say, well, I have 17 articles that are saying this is the case, and I say to you that, well, all of those are biased, and then I present you with 15 articles that are saying this is the case, and you say to me all of those are biased, we've just completely shut down the entire conversation.
yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly hard to find the non-biased, just straight up information.
Right. Well, because because also the people who are doing that research for one side or the other also do not communicate to each other at all. They all live in echo chambers, and they're all, and as we've seen in Robert Kennedy, they're all cowards about it too. That's a huge thing, is the complete blockage of research in areas that are just not popular. But I think that's not just symptomatic of the medical industry, but just in general, anything innovative, whether it's in technology or whether it's like a cultural change, like the Renaissance or something. Usually when something like that starts to go against the grain of the current culture, it always gets pushed back. And it takes time for it to get adoption. But like a lot of the, even in archaeology, you'll have, a thesis on like what's the oldest civilization, and one guy will say that's wrong, it's actually this one, and he's told an idiot, and then 10 years after he dies, people are like, oh wait, that guy was right, whoops. That's just I feel like that's just how culture is. Or even with writers, like some writer will write a great book and people will say it's trash, and then years later they'll be like, wow, this was an amazing piece of work or an amazing book. Or this just seems to be very prevalent.
It's kind of that herd mentality.
Yeah, the herd. If you're with the herd, the mob effect. The mob is narcissistic, non-critical, and impulsive. So and they all just get each other to do crazy, get more crazy, more extreme, because everyone within the mob is trying to show the mob that they're so committed to what they're doing that they just become just more and more like crazed. If you scroll through TikTok lives long enough, you'll run into a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're buying into NVIDIA, you'll run into a lot of that too.
Yes.
Yeah, how do we get here? How do we get here from Marcus to this?
Yeah. I don't know, but
I don't know.
it's been a fun journey. I think we're running about probably like an hour and a half, between hour and a half and 2 hours now, guys. Is there any final words you'd like to add to the podcast? Anything stands out? Any social medias you want to shout out before we get off? Call it.
What's your?
Yeah,
I would just ask for both of you. What's your biggest positions?
My biggest?
Pull that up.
Or most conviction?
My most convicted. Well, it was.
My biggest position, or you go first.
Are we talking about a trade or investment? Because my largest investment position is
Trade.
Largest trade right now. Okay, my largest trade right now.
Or both?
I actually have to double check about these position sizes.
I'll talk while you check.
Okay.
So my largest position, so I still remain heavily weighted in oil and gas. So I'll be forefront and honest. My largest positions are in Baker Hughes, Devon Energy, and Exxon. And I think I'm going to be beefing up my Exxon if there's any pullback, for the sake of, they just announced they're going to be controlling 15% of the lithium production domestically in the next couple years. So, whether they benefit from the continuation of oil rally, or if there's a mass adoption of EVs, they're going to be the winners in my book. And then Devon, they're just a well-run, good old boy E&P shop out in the DJ Delaware basins. Baker Hughes, being in the OFS, oil field services industry, day rates have been going up. And, as we discussed earlier, on harder and harder to reach oil, you're going to need more rigs, going to need more drilling and completion. So Baker Hughes should, stupendously benefit from that. And because I don't actively trade often, my biggest trade right now is that one, the Trimble puts I'm trading. So that's my Only short-term
enough.
position right now.
I need to get more X on. And I actually need to look into Devin too. So for me, I'm kind of tied here. So my largest bullish position is CFG. And which is that regional bank that I think is doing great. I've actually already made about 100.
Wait, you own CFG?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
CFG.
CFG
I
is
have
that
options.
Yeah.
for
is
CFG.
Community bank.
CFG is it's some what is it? Something financial group. It's
Yeah, Citizens Financial.
Citizens Financial Group. Okay, it's a different
Yeah.
CFG. I was thinking.
Yeah.
S-
Where do you get that idea from, Joe? Because I gave that to him.
Oh, did you really? Yeah, Joe mentioned
Yeah.
it to me, and then I did a bunch of digging, and I was like, oh wait, this is great.
Yeah, that was my recommendation. They were trading at such a huge discount to book, and their assets are pretty superb. I mean, that
Yeah.
was my recommendation.
Yeah, he mentioned it to me. He didn't say anything about it. He was just like, I like CFG, and I was like, why do you like CFG? So I did a bunch of digging. I was like, oh, this is juicy. So I guess I should
Mhm.
thank you because I've made 130% so far off that, and I've rolled the contracts. I still have a large position there. And then just today, because I closed a lot of my shorts coming to the close today, I'll probably buy some more of those tomorrow and chase some more of the stuff to the downside. So because of that, my other position that's similarly large right now is actually Pinterest. I just did a bunch of buying for options in Pinterest, and I like the price right now comparative to the market. I think that they're also a potential buyout from one of these big tech companies to use all that data for an AI, as well as just being a social media company that has continued to it's not having a threads effect. It's been under the radar. It's not got any controversy about it. It's just a solid social media company that's continued to have a user base, and it skews female. Like, who doesn't? That's a really hard demographic to capture in the social media space, unless you're not going to buy Instagram, but you could buy Pinterest. So I think Pinterest has a lot going for it. It's a trade that I've gone for in the past and hasn't played out well. Actually, I think earlier this year, I think I actually did make some money off that. I gotta go through my trade log, but I'm going for it again with a sizable position from here, though. I like it. So that's my
Yeah, I
two.
like
Actually,
Pinterest on the social front. And
Yeah.
if you think
put a
about it, the
position on.
purpose,
Sorry.
or go on, or I was going to say the purpose of advertisement on social media is to get that sale. And
Yes.
Pinterest is the closest to that endpoint of advertisement to sale that you can get. So that was my thesis back in 2019, 2020 for Pinterest. I don't know if it still holds today, but that's when I was buying into it and got out of it around 60 or so.
Nice. That was a good one then.
I saw your weekly report when you talked about Pinterest, and after you talked about it, I looked at it as well, and I put a bullish position on in there as well.
Hey, you're watching the weekly reports. Nice.
I try not to, but sometimes I get tricked into.
It's because the thumbnails are so good, right?
That's what it is. The thumbnails just suck me in. My largest position right now is Coinbase for a trade. It's just pretty much a neutral to slightly bearish leaning position, which if we keep going down, it'll turn a little bit more bullish, but it's pretty neutral. And then probably after that, Nvidia, again, slightly bearish. And then the Russell Nasdaq pairs trade.
Okay.
About
Nice.
it.
All right.
Sweet. All right, guys. Well, everyone knows where to find all my socials, but Monty, why don't you oh, actually, I do want to say, follow me on Twitter. If you don't follow me anywhere else, follow me on Twitter. I'm sick of these Twitter accounts with like 40 to 100,000 followers, probably only being half as good as me as a trader. And then people being like, we only have 1,000 followers. So go follow me on Twitter so I can actually get some more attraction and validation. I need some street cred. That's what it is. I need some more street cred. All right. People need to know what's up.
Oh yeah. And if anything, just follow him to bitch at him on his trades.
There you go. Just troll him.
Troll the shit out of him.
I monetize the good trolls.
But
A like is a like.
yep. And then the Peach Pit, of course, for Monty.
The Peach Pit at Substack. I try to put out an article once a week, an analyst report on a company's stock every other week. So be sure to follow to be the first to read. Otherwise, follow my Twitter. Don't know what my handle is, but find me somewhere. And I usually post regularly on there.
All right, and Noob.
And I try to stay off of social media as much as possible. If you want to talk to me, probably the best place to do it is in your Discord. That's kind of, I always have that up. So
You don't make. You're
but
gonna give
outside
up.
of that,
You giving up on your TikTok?
yeah, after they screwed me over, I kind of gave up on it.
Did you get
I've
banned
thought
again?
about going back and making content, but the way that I trade is it's so niche that like there's a very small audience of people out there that could stomach, let alone understand and really get into. And I feel like those people really seek out information. Like you got to really, if you want to trade the style of trading that, you really got to seek out the information and really be dedicated to it. And if you are, you'll find me. You come into the Discord and you'll find me.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today, Noob. It was great having you. Thanks for we had someone cancel, so really appreciate you filling in the whole last second. And I'll talk to you guys in the Discord. Thanks for coming on. Have a great night. And thanks to everyone.
I'll take
for
care.
watching.
Cheers.
Cheers.